Hello, my name is Jason Peck, and this is a Comedy Q&A interview with Milwaukee's official jester, Jane the Phoole, also known as writer-performer A.E. Shapera. In this interview, we talk a little bit about the history of jesters, as well as her experience working as a professional jester. If this is something that interests you, maybe becoming a jester or even one of the walkabout performers that you see at some of the Renaissance fairs here in the United States, A.E. has written a book on the subject called Easy Street. Links are below. In the meantime, please enjoy this interview with Milwaukee's official jester, Jane the Phoole. Thanks.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
So good. How are you doing? Good morning.
Good morning, indeed. I'm doing pretty well. I've been looking forward to this.
As have I.
So, just to clarify, when we initially messaged about this, we were just briefly talking about your name.
Yes.
It is A.E. Shapera, right?
That is correct.
Fantastic. I'm glad I got that right.
Nobody ever pronounces it right the first time around, so
really?
Well done. Well done.
How do they normally do that?
I get Shapera or Shapiro a lot, and Shapiro and Shapera are from the same town in Germany, Speyer, but
right.
One of us is Sephardic Jews and the other is Ashkenazi, and I can't remember which is which, but...
Got it.
But yeah, you did that very nicely done.
Hey!
First try.
That's great. I'm glad.
Yay!
So, what I wanted to find out from you, obviously, we've got the main area that I want to talk to you about, but I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about your background as a performer and entertainer, if I can, first.
Absolutely.
So, what is your background? How, where did you study, and how did you get to this point, roughly?
Absolutely. I grew up in a jazz family. My dad is a professional jazz bass player. His name's Dan Shapera. Okay. And he's played with everyone from Cab Calloway to Chet Baker to everybody. He was the house bassist at the Jazz Showcase.
Okay.
For a time, he traveled with the Dukes of Dixieland with Barrett Deems. He's a super amazing performer. And as a very young child, I was around a lot of improvisation that was musical instead of verbal. But because of my upbringing, just being exposed to that kind of bebop improvisation where there is a structure, but then there's a lot of freedom within that structure. Yeah. But to fully explore that freedom, you have to have immense technique and immense lexicons of musical knowledge. I think from a very early age, I developed a healthy, if albeit subconscious, appreciation for there's a lot more to conversation than just talking. There's listening, and there's building that lexicon of experience and that lexicon of everything that everybody else has already said in case you want to leverage it to make the conversation funnier or more interesting. So when I discovered that I wanted to be a performer, thanks to the Muppet movie, of all things, when I was 9 years old, the Muppet movie came out, and I saw it in the theater. And another little thing about my background that I think is important to mention is that my mother was an alcoholic, and 1 in 5 people in the U.S. grew up in an alcoholic family, and 1 in 4 people worldwide have grown up in this situation. That's like a known psychological phenomenon, but because there's such a taboo, nobody ever talks about it, which is why I bring it up. And one of the things that did for me was my mother always told me I was ugly, that I was hideous. Why would anyone ever want to look at me? Why would I want to perform and deliberately invite people to look at me? But I saw the Muppet movie, and I'm like, this frog is making millions of people happy. If a frog can do that, I can do that too. So got into high school, started doing the theatricals, got into college, and encountered a grad student in the theater program at Northern Illinois University. Because if you want to learn about the human condition, go to the middle of a cornfield? Don't know. Got a scholarship there, so I went. But this grad student said, hey, you're really loud and funny. You should perform outdoors. I was like, are you throwing me out of the theater program?
Right.
And she's like, no, go check out this thing called a Renaissance Fair.
Uh-huh.
So I joined the Dirt Circus in 1990.
Sorry, Dirt Circus?
The Dirt Circus.
Is-
It's a phrase. I think my friend Mary Huff invented the phrase. I'm not sure, but
okay.
it's the Ren Fair circuit is this. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's this odd American phenomenon where, because we were colonized in the 16th century, we're as a culture incapable of moving past it morally.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, thanks. No, but it's fine. I mean, nations that evolved from colonies are sort of, according to David Starkey, noted Tudor historian, he has a theory about nations that originated as colonies, which is that you're sort of morally frozen in the era of colonization.
Yeah, interesting.
Culturally.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, we have this Puritan work ethic. We have this obsession with social hierarchy and this obsession with lineage.
Yes.
And of course, the UK has now moved and grown and moved into the future, and we're stuck rigidly in the 16th century morally. So,
and now we're trying to go back as well, because it's the in
crazy.
thing.
I guess I'm glad I know how to make roughs.
That's right. You'll be making a fortune.
Right, exactly. Anybody needs some black woolen kirtles? Let's get ready. But yeah, so because of all of that, these Renaissance Fair things exist. There's sort of a blend between the Dungeons and Dragons fantasy cosplay world and people who so desperately feel a bond with Tudor England that they've just got to live it. So once I started doing that, I looked at all of the women in the industry who were performing and were great individual characters. And there were these basic archetypes. People could be like the queen, or they could be a wife, a daughter, a prostitute. And I was like, surely prior to the Industrial Revolution, women had more fascinating occupations than this. And I discovered that not only was that true, but that Elizabeth had many female jesters. And in fact, all of the monarchs around the world at that time, there were female jesters everywhere. In Turkey, in China, in Japan, all over the world, there were all these cultures with women who were court jesters, whether they were artificial fools, being entertainers, jugglers, trained performers, or what were called natural fools, who were people who were differently physically able or differently mentally able, who were sort of retained as human pets in a grotesque sense, because the past is another country. So
and that's human beings, though, right? We're sort of we sort of tend to do weird things like that.
We do. We absolutely do. So
it just reminds me of, there was you saw Blackadder, that I'm assuming.
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
I was just reminded of that joke from the Elizabethan times, Blackadder II, where the Queen is talking about what are those people who have the bells, and they say jesters, and she goes, no, lepers.
Miranda Richardson is best. Especially that Elizabethan season of Blackadder.
It sort of nicely sums up humanity's view to other areas of humanity as well.
Right. We're so hierarchical, and we're so tribal, and we so need to exclude others, and it's just a part of who we are. So once I learned about these female jesters, I learned about one in particular who was named, her full name was Jane Bede, or maybe Bettis in different accounting records from the time period. It's spelled different ways because non-standard spelling is so pre-Industrial Revolution. But if you haven't got Gutenberg keeping track of how things are spelled, who cares? Just make it up. So she was a really fascinating character. There's so much written about her from an accounting perspective, and that's it. Like, She had her head shaved routinely.
Wow. Okay.
It's never really explained why. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she had the mange. Maybe Elizabeth just really liked having a bald person around.
But that's not a typical thing for women of that era, though, right?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. Women were prized for the length and luster and sheen of their hair, and wigs were very fashionable.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's really odd and unusual to have a bald woman running around your palace. But the other jesters of the time period, I meant to bring down John Southworth's Fools and Jesters of the English Court as a visual aid, but that's one of the keys to the primary sources of the era that I found about Jane. She had her own clothes. A lot of the other jesters of the era wore hand-me-downs or cast-offs or motleys pulled together from clothes that they received as gifts. But Jane had her own elaborate wardrobe, 12 pairs of shoes a year. She had her own horse. She had ducks and geese. And she was
like
different.
Like an Elizabethan Imelda Marcos.
Yes, exactly. Except not. She was given these as part of her allowance being attached to the royal household. Wow. I think she probably just lost her shoes a lot. She's probably just a real mess because she was differently mentally abled.
Really?
It was written about her that she would just blurt out the first thing that came into her mind, which made her really valuable to the royal person.
Right.
Because she was the only person attached to the household who wasn't ambitious.
Right.
She wasn't going to flatter the queen or give a dishonest answer. She couldn't. Mm-hmm. She lacked the wit to prevaricate. So I was like, oh, why is nobody playing this person? This is the best character ever. I'm going to do this the rest of my life. And here we are now.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so she's essentially your time twin, if you like.
Exactly.
And I like that expression because there was I don't know if you ever saw it, maybe you did. There was a movie in the 80s called Biggles.
Biggles?
Yeah.
It sounds exactly like something I would love. Like Cardinal Fang and Cardinal Biggles from my
Right. So just briefly, because I don't want to get on too much of a sidetrack about this movie, it was a World War II flying ace. These were like stories, British stories written back in the day, and they were working to make this movie, and then Back to the Future came out and it was a big hit, and they went, well, why don't we crowbar in some time travel into this as well, and we need an American in there to be able to sell it to American audiences and internationally, so we'll make Biggles a time traveler.
Wow.
And so what the premise is essentially this American guy, he's the time twin of Biggles, this World War I flying ace who never existed in real life, and then there would be like thunder and lightning, and suddenly they would transport into each other's time.
Whoa!
Right. With no machine, no machinery, anything like that. It was just, here we are. But the one of the expressions I remembered from it was the term time twin, and I really like that idea. And
I do too.
And when you and I were first talking about via Messenger, and you mentioned Jane, our mutual friend Jen mentioned Jane the Phoole, I was Googled, and then Jane the Phoole came up, and you didn't. I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. And then you and I spoke, and that's what made me think of that expression, time twin.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's nice to have a foothold in another culture, another era, another perspective. And yeah, I really like that term. I'm absolutely nicking that off of you.
You should nick it. That'd be great. So, and this is just briefly, we spoke a little bit about your background and how you came to being a jester. This is being a jester then is one of the ways in which you earn a living, right?
It is. It's a small part, but it's really more of a fulcrum to all of the other ways that I hustle. All of my hustles are tied to the Phoole identity, as it were.
Got it.
I'm also the official municipal jester of the city of Milwaukee.
Yeah, that's right. I saw that. So
yeah,
how did that arrive? I mean, did they have one? Do you have a predecessor?
Nope. I'm the first.
Wow.
And it's a lifetime appointment.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it was passed by a unanimous resolution of the Common Council in September of 2004.
That's fantastic.
And the way it came about is hilarious. A few years before that, the Pennington family, who lives at Muncaster Castle in Cumbria in the beautiful Lake District in UK,
Okay.
just a little bit east of Ravenglass, if you know where that is.
I don't. Okay.
It's adorable. They have a little quarter scale railroad that you can ride to a tiny little town that has some sheep in it. It's adorable.
Okay.
It's so beautiful there. They reached out to me because in order to encourage tourism at the castle and the grounds, they have a 90-acre bluebell woods. They have this sprawling grounds with these amazing gardens and an owlery and all of this stuff.
Wow.
They decided, because they were the original home of the original Tom Foole.
Oh, okay.
Thomas Skelton was jester to the Pennington family in the 16th century.
Okay.
And he's the word tomfoolery comes from that dude. Like, he was the guy. He's it.
Wow.
And
at some point in history, he's going, yeah, that's me. I'm the Tom Foole.
Right, exactly.
You're welcome.
Exactly. So they have really embraced, the family's really embraced their Foole connection, and they do a Festival of Fools every year at the end of May, beginning of June, where they have an international Festival of Fools, and then they have a Jester tournament.
Wow.
And so they had contacted me a few years before that and said, we would really love for you to attend and represent America, represent Milwaukee in this competition. So when we finally got the trip together, raised funds to go, all that sort of thing, we had a mutual friend in Minneapolis who is the official town crier of St. Paul, I think it is. And he enters these heraldry competitions around the world.
Okay.
And he placed 8th in the world.
Wow.
Like, in one of these giant heraldry tournaments for people who are town criers.
Yeah.
And
okay.
so my spouse got together with a friend of ours who happened to be the deputy city clerk of the city of Milwaukee at the time.
Okay.
And said, hey, let's get Jane the Phoole some credentials to attach her to the city. So they talked to some members of Common Council. They thought it was a great idea. And now I have this really impressive plaque on my wall.
Wow, that is really impressive.
And in 2007, I finally went over and competed in the International Jester Tournament. I didn't take first, but I still definitely won because I was the first woman to compete, one of the first Americans. And I was after the competition, all of the TV stations were sort of swarming over to me going, get her, she can talk. Get the one who can talk. She can talk. She can talk the talk. She knows her these and thous. Get her clothes.
Interesting. So you're sort of saying then that other jesters that were there,
yes,
weren't that talkative?
Well, they had their shtick during their show, but what I do with Jane the Phoole is a bit different from what everybody else was doing. A lot of in fact, all the other competitors in the tournament were really variety performers, jugglers, stilt walkers, magicians, balloon entertainers, prop comedians, multiple genre physical comedians. And my shtick is I talk to people. That's what I do. I just have conversations with people. So my performance, I started just milling around the grounds, engaging people at this beautiful, 16th century palace in the middle of these rolling hills in Cumbria with all this history attached to it. To be in the motley at that place was incredibly amazing. And just sort of Jane the Phoole it up with people for a week before the competition.
Wow.
And really gave the people there a flavor for this insane American woman with her fake British accent is being and bowing all of us, and we love it. And it was a really fantastic time. And the family enjoyed it so much that I now have carte blanche to roll up in motley whenever I want. So it's kind of cool to know, oh, there's this castle in actual real England that will have me over anytime. So
yeah, that is great.
was really fun.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. That's really cool. So
Yeah.
you just sort of briefly touched upon what some of the other jesters were doing in terms of like the performance and all that. I did a quick Google because I'll be honest with you right now, I should have mentioned this before. My knowledge of jesters is really, really thin. I have certain areas of comic history that I'm aware of, and I only have a passing awareness of jesters. But the Googs, as I like to call it, when I did the search, it was sort of telling me that jesters typically, do juggling and sorts of other, various sorts of physical comedy, but you don't do that.
I do juggle, but I'm not the best juggler. I am nothing. I'm not a competition level juggler.
Right.
I keep a few balls in the air.
Right.
But I am more of an artist of conversation. I'm an artist of including the audience, elevating the audience in social status, establishing common ground between myself and the audience, even if we're 400 years apart, languages apart, cultures apart, economic statuses apart, finding that common ground and making the conversation worth it for myself, for the guest, and for everyone who might be within a mile of that interaction. So because that's the kind of show I bring, it's a different show every time. There's fresh material every time because I never know who I'm going to meet. I'm going to meet people from all over the world whenever I do one of these events. So it's a different kind of variety of performing. It's very situational, very improvisational, and often very uproarious and ridiculous.
Yeah, I think there was at some point, I've got two kids. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. One 6, 1 3.
Awesome.
I think certainly within the last 6 years, we try to go to the Bristol Ren Fair as often as you can, as easy as the kids get older.
Right.
I think we run into you at least once.
Wow, fantastic! I haven't been there for 5 years actually.
Oh, so then maybe not. Who was that?
I don't know. There's I do have a lot of students who are still there, so it's entirely possible that you struck up an awesome conversation with one of them.
So maybe we did see you when our youngest was about a year old then.
Possibly.
Yeah, it is. Because I guess also because we have mutual friends and I see your pictures coming up on Facebook, I feel like I've seen you more recently than is probably true.
I have infiltrated your society by propagation of ridiculous social onslaught.
So while we were just touching on aspects of performance there, one of the questions I want to ask you was, what's the difference, maybe not officially, but in your mind at least, what's the difference between a jester and what a clown does?
So a line that I often use, because when I'm in the motley, it's very clown looking. It's a lot of bright colors. It's a huge skirt over a giant farthingale. I wear an oversized bum roll that's completely inappropriate to the era, but is comical. Mm-hmm. It's large enough that people will leave stuff on it, like a plate or a dog or a baby. People are always leaving stuff. It's so big that I've named it. It's called Bum Rolio.
Okay, nice. Okay.
So my friend in the Shakespearean era that always has my back. And so I have this ridiculous look that is a little bit clowny. And there's a fair number of people who are terrified of clowns.
Yes.
So one of the lines that I always use to offset that fear is, no, I'm not a clown. I'm an idiot. There's a difference. Clowns are highly trained. I'm just stupid.
Got it.
So, which very, very hurriedly and terribly sums up the difference between the type of fool that Jane was, my time twin, and what a clown is. There were many clowns who were artificial jesters, artificial fools in Her Majesty's court. And artificial isn't a denigratory term. It's not a deprecation. It's that this person has practiced an art. So there were many famous clowns of the era who were attached to the court. So Ned Allen was one of them. Dick Burbage was one of them.
Right.
So yeah, so Dick Tarleton was another one, and these were people who were trained in comedy, who had studied, who had performed at the Inns of Court, who had toured, who had they were classically literate. They had read the ancients. They might even have Latin.
Right.
But Jane was not one of these. Jane was kind of human furniture. Jane was a pet. Okay. She was retained. And I don't play her as differently mentally able, not to an extreme, because I don't think that modern American audiences in particular really want to see portrayal. It'll be upsetting. It'll be, it won't be honoring the people who really live with that as a part of their lives. So, so I kind of just play her as a witty nincompoop, just a forgetful sort of, chatty cocktail hostess, basically, who basically I assume that all guests are, all visitors, all patrons are also nobility, and it's my job to make sure that they go and meet all of the other famous rich people. So I immediately ennoble everybody by bestowing titles on them and ridiculous names, and then I immediately rush them off to the nearest ridiculously wealthy earl or countess or baron or other courtier to make sure that they've met. And then we all have a wonderful conversation together in the vein of Baldassare Castiglione's The Courtier, so that we can talk about what really makes a person noble, or whatever we happen to talk about.
What was that? What was that last thing you just said?
Baldassare Castiglione, The Courtier. Have you never read this?
No.
It's okay. This is ridiculous. I have been training people at Renaissance fairs in the dirt circus for 20 years.
Okay.
And hardly anyone in this vein has ever read this book. This book was written in the 16th century by Italian, a courtier. Okay. And it's a conversation between imaginary characters who are all courtiers, one of whom is a woman. And they're all talking about what the essential qualities of being a noble person are. And it's a really fast read. It's really funny. It's really engaging. And it's basically a manual to being a 16th century aristocrat. But most people who play 16th century aristocrats have never read it, and it makes me crazy. I'm like, there's a manual, guys. They
from then.
Yeah, they left you breadcrumbs.
There's all this evidence lying around. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Like same thing with Niccolo Machiavelli. The Prince is still there. You can read it. You can get a comic book version of it.
Right.
There's like many comic book versions. There's 5-minute, thug history videos of Machiavelli's The Prince, but nobody, it's there. They left it for you. Read it. It's good.
I think it sounds like it's kind of similar to Shakespeare in a way, because he's like, here are the road maps, and everyone, we seem to be like, we're going to throw this away, and we're going to do it how we're supposed to do it.
Right. We're going to put it in English. No, it's in English already. It's actually already in English. Can you just? Yeah. It's a not a frustration. It's a challenge.
Right.
It's an opportunity.
Just while we're briefly on that, I just wanted to mention to you, this will probably sound like a digression. It's just come into my head. You were talking about doing an English accent when you were performing Jane the Phoole.
Yes.
Obviously, I'm not going to put you on the spot and make you do that in front of an English person.
It's very kind of you. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you knew anything about original pronunciation.
Okay, so...
You do? Okay.
Quick digression. So I'm a huge fan of OP, and that wonderful book that is up in the bookcase right now, and I can see it, and I can't remember what it's called. But that guy that's doing all the OP stuff right now, who's working with the people at the Globe and doing the 1 or 2 OP productions during their regular season. So
I know that there's a father and a son.
Yes.
The father's name escapes me, even though I've had an email exchange with him, and that's really bad.
Right.
His son is called Ben.
Yes.
And he
What's
does
the
it.
last name? It's
He
like
does
Lightning or
He
something.
does a one-man show called Shakespeare on Toast, I think.
Yes. Yes, that's the guy. And I'm
Yeah.
embarrassed that I can't recall his name at the moment. But his work is fantastic, and the way that they've been able to tease out the vowel sounds and the consistency in consonants and the consistency in vowels. I have found that if you try to persuade a modern American audience that aristocrats from the 16th century sounded like unto this, they absolutely think that you're in a Robert Louis Stevenson pirate movie.
Yeah, and you're doing it wrong.
They're very classist about it, and they're very classist about it based on what they've experienced from watching Masterpiece Theater and watching Mystery and whatever else they're getting on BBC America. They want modern received pronunciation for wealthy people, and they want modern rural pronunciation for middle-class people. Yeah. And they want Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins for poor people, and that's how they've sort of sorted it out for their own little noggins. I would love to enlarge their reality and expose them to aristocratic 16th century characters that have the appropriate dialect, but it's a long, slow fight.
Right.
Yeah, because they sort of decided that they absolutely want to hear an Elizabeth that sounds like Miranda Richardson in Blackadder, which is not her fault at all, because that's hilarious. Yeah. Everybody knows Nancy's stupid. I mean, that's funny, but...
yeah, she was fantastic in that.
But it's really hard in a classist society that's very rigorously obsessed with social hierarchy and class status to dislodge the class association of those round vowels and those consistent sort of sounds and make it seem like that. No, this is what people sounded like. It's a cool opportunity.
It is. I mean, you know, I when I learned about it, I thought, well, you know, all Shakespeare should be done in this way. But then you run the risk of just doing a museum piece.
Yes.
You know, which is what happens when they were like, we're going to do it in Elizabethan dress. It's like, well, they did that because that was contemporary for them.
Right. Right. I'm always excited when you find directors who find a really great way into the text that also makes it shockingly relevant to the audience. I'm one of very few people who love Shakespeare that I know that also loves Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. I'm sorry, I love it. I'm sorry. The guns, hilarious. The ways that some of the speech are reinterpreted and reshuffled, hysterical and super relevant. When I saw Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet in the theaters, and I think that was 95 when that came out.
Yeah, 95, 96.
There were all these teenage girls leaving the theater at the end, incoherently sobbing, going, I can't believe they both died. And in that moment, I'm going, oh, you really didn't know how it was going to end. You came to this because Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes were in it.
Yeah.
But this is your, everything is broken, but okay.
Yeah.
So if there's people who are making it accessible, those are the ones who are landing with an audience.
Right. I went to see it because it was Shakespeare and my then girlfriend wanted to see it. But I was lucky enough that I discovered John Leguizamo in there as well. And I was like, who's this guy?
He's magical.
Yeah, Johnny Legs is great.
Whatever. Baz Luhrmann is a soundtrack wizard. So many good tunes used so well in that thing.
So, just to pull us back, even though I'd love to talk about original pronunciation a little bit more,
absolutely,
I will be going out of my depth in that subject area. So when you're performing as Jane the Phoole, I'm trying to figure out how it works with Jen as well, our mutual friend. You just go around to the Renaissance fairs?
I do. I don't do as many of them as I once did. I'm doing some new things in performance over the past 5 years, but currently the main sort of north star and south pole of my schedule are in the springtime. I do a small one weekend charity-based fair in Janesville, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Myville. It's Myville because I'm Jane.
Right.
We were going to call it Jamestown, and everyone said that was a terrible idea. Nobody would want to drink anything. So, apologies for my dreadful attempt at terrible 1935 received pronunciation. But
that's how my children are going to end up talking. My wife's American. I'm English. Their accents are toast.
Be transatlantic.
That's right.
They're going to have that transatlantic thing.
Yeah. Hello, mother, father.
Bring me back something with real hair.
Yeah. Where's my smoking jacket?
Yes. Where are my slippers? They'll have to listen to Mr. B, the Gentleman Rhymer, and Chap Hop, which is another subject entirely. But what were we talking about?
We were talking about Janesville, where you perform in the spring.
Yep. So that's my spring show, and there's all of the proceeds from that show go to supporting education in the area.
Nice.
So go to high school scholarships, scholarship funds for college for students. They collect food for a food pantry at the entry there. So it's a show to feel really good about supporting. And it's tiny. It's in a public park and it's adorable. And there's a lot of edutainment that goes on there. There are little groups that are both entertainers and historical. So, for example, the Guild of St. Michael, which is a group of performers who portray one of the trained bands of the area, which is a coming together of the military commanders of a bunch of regional militias. And they've got cannons and armor you can try on and weapons that you can learn about. They do shows about how not to die, shows about the true art of defense in European self-defense at the time. Another subject of mine, because I'm polymath, I'm rabidly interested in that too. But there's members of a group who portray Elizabeth's court who attend there, and there's entertainment for children of all ages there. So that's what I do in the springtime. And then in the fall, there's this fake castle in Oregon, Illinois called Stronghold. I was just there 2 weeks ago, three weeks ago. And it was built by the family that owned the Chicago Daily News in the 1920s and 30s.
Okay.
And they saw William Randolph Hearst's Xanadu, and they're like, "Hey, we want a Xanadu, but we have $2." So we're going to build a bargain basement Xanadu. But it's this adorable little replica of an English castle, and then there's these rolling hills and beautiful landscape. And
is it made of plastic?
It's actually a lot of stonework and some plaster, and it's a little odd.
Okay.
But currently it's owned by the Black Hawk Presbytery.
Okay.
And it's a Presbyterian retreat center. And so this one weekend fair sort of benefits taking care of the center and keeping up the ground. So different community groups and other professional organizations will use it as a retreat place, or, people will get married there, have there. So it's a beautiful grounds, and it's a cool organization to support. I'm not Presbyterian myself, but I have jokes about Presbyterians. But they're really into committees, it turns out. But so I sort of keep my hand in by doing those, and then I'll do an odd day here and there at different other fairs around the country or wherever I happen to be that I can take my dress, which takes up a giant suitcase.
Right.
I practically have to buy it its own ticket, so.
Get its own seat on a plane.
Seriously. I'm sitting here and my dress is sitting there.
So that's how you fill your year with Jane, right?
Yes, but there's so much more to the Fooleverse than Jane the Phoole now.
Yeah, I've glanced at your website and I was like, oh, okay, there's a lot going on here.
It's a lot. One of the things I do too many things. It's a fact that I do too many things. But one of the things I do is I studied 16th century defense at a school in Stoughton, Wisconsin called the St. Martin's Academy of Medieval Arts. And my fight teacher, who I affectionately refer to as Fighty Bob, his name is Bob Sharon.
Okay.
His maestro is, I forgot his maestro's name. Anyhow, he's a fantastic fencing and wrestling and knife defense teacher who studied Fiore, Vigiani, the Italians, and the English and others. He often looks at my life and goes, "You need to do fewer things." And my argument is it's all fool. It's all being a fool. It's just different facets of it. So,
what do you mean? Can I just ask what you mean by that? Because what I was trying to figure out, you've said that a couple of times that it all relates. How does it all connect together for you?
So for me, what being a fool is, and there's wonderful books about it. I brought visual aids.
Okay.
Sure. Brought show and tell. This is a book by Beatrice Otto called "Fools Are Everywhere: The Court Jester Around the World," and it's a wonderful cross-cultural analysis of through every culture's history, the people who have fulfilled the office of fool, whether it's medicine clowns in First Nations peoples around the world.
What's a medicine clown?
Medicine clowns or medicine people.
Okay.
Specifically the clowns in First Nations peoples. I can tell you about in North America.
Like Patch Adams, you mean?
Well, kind of, but with First Nations cultures in the U.S., like, for example, the Cherokee people.
Yeah.
Their medicine clown, one of the things that a medicine clown will do in Cherokee culture is if there's somebody in a community who is doing something that's outside the social norms and is damaging. Like, for example, let's say there's somebody who's really vain and they're really concerned about their appearance. They're getting a ton of cosmetic surgery or spending too much time fixing their hair or whatever, or doing something that isn't really helping the community but is just focusing attention on them.
Yeah.
The medicine clown will follow them around all the time and mimic them and exaggerate what they're doing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Until the person finally turns around and goes, "Oh, okay. All right. I see you." And so that's one of the ways in which the fool reflects society back to itself and goes,
"Got it.
Are you sure this is what you want to be looking like? Because this is what you're doing, and this is what everybody thinks about it. So just letting you know, I don't have an opinion. I'm just a mirror." And the fool is a social mirror throughout a wide variety of cultures. In Danish literature, there's a character called Till Eulenspiegel.
Nice.
There's an opera about him. And he was a fool in Danish folklore. And that character also pops up in German folklore and a lot of the Nordic folklores. And his name can translate to either owl mirror or wise mirror. So when you see representations of fools in Northern European art or architecture or design, a lot of times you'll see them not holding the little head on a stick, the marat or bauble, as it's sometimes called, but you'll see them holding a mirror or holding an owl or both.
Okay.
Because the owl is supposed to represent wisdom, and it's the wiser part of our natures that really ponders things. And the mirror is, are you sure? You sure you want to look like this?
Yeah.
Like, I happen to have one right here because you never know when somebody's going to need to reflect. So I have buried in one of the trunks is a marionette of a jester that was bought for me as a Christmas present, flown over from Denmark. And sure enough, in one hand, there's an owl, and the other hand, there's a mirror.
Wow.
And do your kids have Playmobil? Playmobil figures, they're like Legos, but a little bit bigger.
Yeah, maybe one or two, I think.
So if you buy Playmobil, if you get a Playmobil Jester, those are made, I think they're made in Denmark. Okay. I might be wrong, but I think they're Danish. The Jester figure either comes with an owl or a mirror. So you have to like randomly buy a bunch of them to get both.
Yeah.
I lucked out. Like the first two I got, the first one had an owl and the second one had a mirror. So I have both. Yay! But but yeah, that's a function of the Fool. So I try to be a bizarrely non-threatening mirror to people and go, this is what's going on. Are we sure we like it? Okay.
Okay. And that ties in with the music as well, right? Because you do some DJ work.
It does. It does. How do I make this a short story? I don't know if I can. I'm going to try.
All right.
When I had been at the Bristol Fair for 24 years.
Surely not.
I was.
Okay.
I was there for a frightfully long time. I had actually back in the mid 90s, I lived in Los Angeles briefly and discovered house music.
Yeah.
And it changed my life. I loved it. I was like, wow, look at this communal celebration. Look at these people dancing in streets, which ties in this other book that I want to recommend.
Yeah.
Which is Dancing in the Streets by Barbara Ehrenreich of Nickel and Dime fame. And it's all about collective joy expressions through history, which are now, in our modern era, relegated only to sports and military displays, which is sad, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But so once I started to explore house music culture, and I came back to the Midwest where it wasn't anymore, even though it started in Chicago, it was gone in the 90s.
Okay.
I couldn't find it anywhere. I discovered the internet. I discovered the house music community worldwide. And a woman named Sasha, who ran an internet radio TV station called Ideal Club World that I was really involved with and really interested in, she reverse stalked me on Facebook and saw that I'd been in entertainment for 24 years. So when I wrote to her and said, hey, I want to join your competition for DJs to maybe win a spot on your secondary channel, she said, no, I'm recruiting you directly to the resident DJ team on the main channel. You've been interacting with people forever. And I was like, I've never beat matched in my life. She's like, the music is what brings people together, but what they stay for is human connection, and that's what you bring. Right. So the facet of Jane the Phoole-ism that I bring to everything that I do is connecting with new people, including people in what I'm doing, automatically granting them access to what I'm doing, elevating people, saying, yeah, you passed the test, which wasn't even a test. You are in the in crowd, and the in crowd is a cool in crowd to be in. Yeah. Building the bridge between myself and others, and making the experience worth it for everyone involved. So the DJing, the show that I have is called Fool and the Gang, and it's on every Friday from 7 to 9 p.m. Central U.S. time. And you can find out all about it at fool.com/gang. But
and how are you spelling Fool?
I spell it a special way for non-standard spelling's sake. It's PHOOLE.
PHOOLE. And that's
I've been
.com?
calling myself
.com?
.com. Fool.com. It's all there. The entire Fooliverse is there for you.
Wonderful. Okay.
After I started using that spelling, I learned that word in Hindi means flower. I was like, oh.
Oh, nice.
Nice coincidence.
Nice. And so you've been performing for quite a while. You mentioned about 24 years or so. You've done a lot of the jestering as Jane the Phoole. You work as a DJ, and you're an author as well. I am. I understand from your website, right?
I am.
Is that a good enough segue?
Yes, that was perfect. That was very, very awesome. And thank you so much for bringing it up.
Sure.
I would have forgotten to talk about it. I've written 2 books. Here they are.
2? I missed 2. The second one.
I forgot to tell you about the second one. There's something vibrating over here. I got to turn it off. Okay. So the first one I published in 2012 is called Easy Street.
Easy Street. Okay.
And it is a guide for players in improvised interactive environmental performance, walk-around entertainment, and first-person historical interpretation.
Nice.
And I was lucky enough to get a blurb from Christopher Moore.
Okay.
Have you ever read Christopher Moore's Fool?
No.
You must. It's the funniest, And he really gets what it is to be a fool. His book, Fool, is the story of King Lear from the point of view of the fool.
Right, yeah, I did know that. I've heard of it, yes, but I have not
And
read
it's
it.
written in early modern English. Like, he gets it. He gets the role of the fool in society. He gets that when you have the ability to speak truth to power, you also have the responsibility to speak truth to power. And
Right.
he just gets it. And it's laugh out loud, extremely funny. So I asked him to blurb it, and he did. It was amazing.
Wow, that's really cool.
So my first book covers everything from why to engage the audience to how to engage the audience, what's necessary for breaking down the barriers in terms of your look, your sound, what you say, how much each of those things matters, and how important it is to include the audience and elevate the audience so that they have an experience with you that they will remember the rest of their lives.
Right.
And if you're playing a nasty villain.
So essentially then, let's say, for example, for argument's sake, I want to go down this route. I do have a background as a performer, as you know.
Yes.
But let's say I don't. I'm interested in going in there, or I've just graduated college, and this is something now that I'm interested in.
Yes.
If I buy your book, is that going to help set me along the path?
You can basically use it as a workbook for creating your first character.
Nice.
Deciding how you want to orient that character towards the audience, who the audience is to your character, who everyone in the audience is to your character, how you will make each person who pays to get in the most important person in your story when you interact with that person, and what you can leave each of those people with so that you've made a difference in their life that they will never forget. And it's all in there. I have step-by-step instructions for how to brainstorm ideas for characters that a lot of people found really useful for brainstorming things outside of character development for interactive performance, whether it's a Wild West show or a science fiction convention or a cosplay or a Ren Fair type of thing. A lot of people read Easy Street and said, hey, can you make a version of this that's for everyone? And so that's what my second book became. That's what Make It Worth It is all about.
Make It Worth It. Okay. So this is essentially a more general version of Easy Street.
Exactly. It really focuses in on those 4 points of include, elevate, build the bridge, and make it worth it. So, and putting together Make It Worth It opened the door to me for another career, which is motivational speaking. So corporations now have me in when they find that there's a disconnect between their front lines, their customer service staff, and the people that they're trying to reach, where the customer service staff no longer knows why to connect or how to have a conversation, which is a weird thing about modern culture. We have more ability to connect than ever, but less knowledge about why or how to connect than ever before.
Right.
Resulting in widespread social isolation, social rejection, and its associated social ills and physical ills.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I'm just sort of thinking about this now. I think that if you have, like you do, if you have experience interacting, human interaction with people.
Yes.
And then you get on social media, I think it amplifies that.
It does.
It refines it. But if you don't have that, and then you get on social media, it seems to amplify what you don't have.
That is very well put. It absolutely is an amplifier for rejection, for classism, for tribalism, for all of the categorizations and divisions of people. It throws up its own obstacles to connection in a lot of ways, even though that's oxymoronical, since its intended purpose is to connect people.
Right. And because we've all got the screens as well, which, a lot of certain younger generations always get criticized for by, older generations. But, that's the way that we connect now, because older generations will, probably we're the same generation. We're always on the phone in our youth and calling people up. So the difference now is you have the entire world, an entire history of knowledge in your phone.
And you have everybody's internal monologue that might not necessarily be what you would have consumed had you just been walking down the street with that person on your way to go sit on some swings at the park.
Right.
You wouldn't necessarily have their entire political ideology or their entire, belief in a class system or adherence to a rigid social hierarchy. You might not have any idea about that. You might just know that you like Metallica and they like Metallica and you're going to listen to some Metallica. Like,
right.
we forget how to just be a person with another person.
Yeah. It's
So,
really interesting.
with Easy Street and also with Make It Worth It, a lot of the challenges in repeopling people, reconnecting people to, hey, we have some evolutionary opportunities to relearn this special thing that makes us human, which is the way that we communicate.
Repeopling people. I've just written that down. I like that.
Repeople the people. That's one of the phrases I use that always gets a laugh and then gets a afterwards is there's people in those people. Those people that you see every day that look like people, there's people in them.
Yeah, that's right.
It sounds like such a duh statement, but most of us will just blatantly disregard the humanity, especially when so many of us spend so many hours in a little metal box hurtling on a concrete strip with each other.
Yeah.
You're in this box and you hate everyone in the other boxes and you've never even met them.
Right.
If you were all in a queue at a bank, you'd at least feel like, oh, we're all sad in this queue together.
Mm-hmm.
But you wouldn't hate them for, maybe not taking a step forward slightly as quickly as you'd like.
Right.
There's people in those people. It's a tough reminder in this modern world.
Yeah. You've just sort of reminded me that, in ancient Greece and in the Elizabethan times as well, tying that in. Look at that. It's a link.
There it is. Bring it back.
Everybody would just be in the same space together, when there were, the Greeks in their theatres and then, in the Elizabethan theatres, everyone's just in it together. And we're all,
The first time I went to Italy, I never wanted to come home because part of Italian culture, particularly, I haven't been that far south. The farthest south I've been is Rome, but every day at 5 o'clock, it's fare la passeggiata. It's the time of day when you stop working and everybody goes for a walk. And the public squares are full of people having conversations, telling stories about their day, telling animated anecdotes about things. And it's so human. It's so human.
Mm-hmm.
It's what we're supposed to do. It's what we're made for. And I feel like that's one of the draws of the whole dirt circus. One of the reasons that Renaissance fairs just continue to grow in popularity throughout the States is that every other part of culture is so socially disjointed that to be able to go to a thing that looks like a city kind of and wear ridiculous clothes and have conversations with strangers that become your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, we're behaving like people. Yay!
Right. My only thing with Renaissance fairs now is that the name doesn't seem to accurately reflect the characters anymore.
No,
because we've now brought in steampunk, which is not an issue, but it's like, well, it's not Renaissance,
Nope. I remember when the Pirates of the Caribbean movies came out, and everyone was coming dressed as Captain Jack Sparrow. So you've got the 18th and 19th century in the 16th century. Yeah. And there's a number of people in the biz who just reject those people and say, well, I'm just not going to see them because they don't make sense to me in my time period.
Right.
And I'm like, so you're basically going to just punch them in the face and go, thanks for trying to engage in a social activity.
Right.
But you failed because you chose the wrong outfit. So I reject you.
Yeah.
Or just go, what a charming person who walks strangely. One of my favorite sports to do as Jane the Phoole was organize a jacathlon. I'd get all the patrons together who were all dressed as Captain Jack Sparrow and make them do relay races. Because they're, doing that and falling down. And it's hilarious to see 40. It's like the Monty Python sketch where it's all the Queen Victorias racing. Right. I just find a lot of people dressed as the same thing doing the same thing to be very funny.
Yeah.
But there's room for everyone there, and I think that's the point, is that there's room for steampunk, there's room for spacemen, there's room for pirates, there's room for children dressed as dragons. There's room for everyone because we need everyone because
Absolutely.
it takes a village.
Right. Absolutely. But I think they should, have a name which more accurately reflects it, though, don't you think?
I don't even know what you call that. Like outdoor con, tree con. I don't know. I don't know what the next incarnation of it will be.
CosCon.
Right, like Game of Thrones land. Not sure.
Yeah.
Outdoor people fun time land.
Yeah. Repeopling people land.
Right. Come here, be a person, win prizes.
Get your inner freakon, right?
Yeah. I don't know how they're going to rebrand that, or if they'll find a way to. It is very puzzling when you go in expecting there to be some adherence to the word Renaissance, and then you see nothing but, falling lace cuffs and
fairies and
panniers and people on roller skates and yeah, it's very strange.
Right.
These have been awesome questions. Thank you so much. I feel both erudite and slightly more famous than I did before.
Well, it's not been released yet, but it will be.
Excellent.
I'll just wrap things up. So just to remind myself and anybody who may deign to watch this or listen to this, we can find you at phoole.com, which is PHOOLE.com.
That is correct.
That's where your entire Phoole existence is.
Yep, and you just click on any of the squares on there and it'll take you to a new thing. There's Phoole and the Gang, which you can find at Phoole.com. There's also Phoole's Panharmonium, which is the steampunk electro swing version of Phoole and the Gang.
Okay.
Which I take out to steampunk events. It's a combination of music appropriate to that area and visuals strictly from 1899 and before, which is fun. We do a lot of mixing of Georges Méliès videos with each other, which is delightful. And there's the books, there's the public speaking, there's the Phooleversity, which is public speaking and workshops. Nice. Everything's there.
Okay. And so the interactive players was Easy Street.
Easy Street.
And the more broader version for a broader audience, if you like, is Make It Worth It.
That is correct.
Wonderful.
Yay!
Well,
you have it for me.
It's been fantastic.
Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you so much again for your time and for your knowledge and the experience. I really appreciate it.
So great. I really look forward to checking out your whole podcast and seeing how it all turns out.
Thank you very much.
Yay! Right. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
All right, you too.
All right, bye now.
Cheers.